Noswaith, good evening everyone, and welcome to my Facebook Live, which is a panad with a guest. Normally I have a guest on my sofa in Westminster, but I'm speaking to you tonight. Noswaith, good evening, from my home just outside Holyhead. I've got a very special guest, Kate Nicholls, who is the CEO of UK Hospitality. But before I introduce Kate and we go through your questions, I'd just like to give you an update on my last few days. And I'd like to thank all of those that have been sending in mugs from my panad with Virginia. We've got Beaumaris Jail and Courthouse, and we've got the Royal Welsh Shop Club. We've had also mugs from Holyhead Towing. So thank you for all of those. I'd also like to say, Jockenbell, thank you to the team at Sarah Embroidery for this most amazing jacket. I've got to show you this jacket, Virginia Crosby MP. I'll be wearing that out and about. And I'd like to thank Anna and Wayne up at Sarah Embroidery in Amloch. They've also been making jackets for lots of other MPs as well, Jane Hunt and MPs all over the UK. So they'll all be wearing these fantastic jackets from Sarah Embroidery in Amloch. I've had a really busy week already, and I just want to highlight how I've got my defibrillator training tomorrow. It's my second defibrillator training. It's going to be in Gwalchmai tomorrow morning between 10 and 12. If you'd like to come along, please do email me and I'll give you the exact details. And then last week I met up with the Minister, Graham Stewart, to talk about the Holyhead Hydrogen Hub. I gave him a bit of an update there from men to morn. Then I met with the US Embassy, the new energy attaché, and we talked about Wilver. We talked about small modular reactors and how important Wilver is as a nuclear site for the UK. And then on Wednesday, I love it when my constituents come to Prime Minister's questions. It's a real opportunity for me to catch up with them and have some company. All of my team are based most of my team are based in Holyhead, and I'm quite unusual in Westminster in that I don't have anyone in the office there. So it was great to catch up with Ocean Roberts and Phil Ogden, who've got a fantastic who've got a fantastic pizza van behind the Kinmel Arms in Marlborough. So definitely want to check out. And then earlier this week, yesterday, I caught up with the Marlborough RNLI. I had the privilege of judging the dog show, Best Dogs. It was a big fundraiser for May Day for the RNLI, and a big shout out to Phil Hoyle and the team there, who gave me a warm welcome. And then yesterday evening, I had the invitation from Councillor Kevin Sylvia to the music festival in Beaumaris, and I was joined by another MP. Actually, I was joined by Sarah Appleton, who's the MP for Wrexham, and I really would recommend going along. It's on until the 31st of May, so definitely go along. It's great musical experience. And then today I've been to see a couple of companies. I've been to see Big Innovation and Metex. Big Innovation is at MSpark and Metex is in the business park in Gerwin, and catching up with companies that have benefited from the 2.7 million Community Renewal Fund money from the UK government. They've been working with Group Clenching and Menai and a fantastic guy called Stu Meads from Greening Edge, working with companies across the island to help them in terms of their businesses and deliver net zero. Mona Lifting is a fantastic example of a company that's benefited from this. They're putting in solar panels. Date for your diary, Wednesday the 22nd of November. I'm going to invite all of these companies that have benefited from the Community Renewal Fund and are driving towards net zero to my Anglesey Day in Westminster in the Jubilee Room in the afternoon. Please, any companies that are interested in coming along, or any individuals, please do get in touch. So now it leads me to introduce my fantastic guest, Kate. Thank you for your patience. Where are you calling from now at the moment? Where are you based at the moment?
I'm calling from home in Ealing. So,
in Ealing?
Yes. So towards the west of London, heading out on the M4, so towards Wales.
Oh, brilliant. So this is the second Zoom we've actually had with you, because we did a tourism roundtable last year at MSpark. We had a lot of people from the tourism and hospitality sector, and you were very helpful. Now, the sector is really important to Anglesey. It's around 15% of the working people on Anglesey work in the tourism sector. That's around 4,500 people. And in terms of your experience of tourism in terms of Wales and across the UK, how did you get into this role?
Well, I started in the European Parliament and the House of Commons, and I worked as a researcher, and I worked on a lot of food legislation and employment legislation. And then I was recruited off the back of that to go and work in Whitbread, and that's where I started working in hospitality. And at the time, Whitbread had the brewery at Mega, they had hotels across Wales and across the rest of the UK, they had pubs, bars, restaurants, they had coffee shops. So I covered the breadth of all of that hospitality offer. And that's what got me fascinated about tourism, because it was so clear that this was driving a sense of place, was the way to unlock investment and regeneration in communities, brought people together, and was important economically, socially and culturally. And I think that's what you see across Wales, but more particularly on the island of Anglesey, where Welsh tourism is synonymous with culture, the food, the heritage, the language. It brings it all together and it makes it real. And it's what gives us a sense of place.
Excellent. No, thank you. That's great to have your background. And our paths first crossed when COVID, and you were amazing at getting all of us MPs together and giving us the support in what was a really, really difficult time. And I must, thank you for that. You were absolutely standout, exceptional. But I think a lot of people have really forgotten the support that the tourism and hospitality sector had. We had, Eat Out to buy one get one free, essentially. So that support. If you could maybe revisit the support the industry had.
Well, I think it is worth remembering, because people sort of talk now, and it is a really difficult period of time for the industry. We've gone through one crisis after another, and nobody's been able to draw breath. And that's why the businesses are feeling so fragile, feeling so battered and bruised. But it is worth remembering that, 3 years ago, just over 3 years ago, when we were closed down, the furlough scheme, the grants that came through, the business rates relief passed on in different ways by the Welsh government and the English government hasn't always translated across, and at times businesses in Wales have fared far worse than their counterparts in England. Eat Out to help out, the cut in VAT, £39 billion of support for the sector. And I think I counted that there were, in that COVID period, 14 equivalents to a budget. And in every one of those, we were front and centre, and we got support, and we got real meaningful cash from the Chancellor, as he then was, and the Prime Minister now. So, the sector, I think, front and centre of the pain that was endured by businesses due to COVID, but also front and centre in support coming through. And coming through more latterly, Jeremy Hunt in the last budget again provided further support. There was energy relief. There was also business rates relief. We still need to keep the pressure on the Welsh government to translate that through. They got the money, they haven't provided it to hospitality and tourism businesses in the way that they have done. So we need to keep the pressure on to make sure that the money flows through to those hard-pressed businesses.
And you mentioned the differences between sort of the UK government and the Welsh government, and a lot of the people have been asking questions, and we have had a lot of email questions through. And one of the issues that gets people very exercised is the tourism tax in Wales. It might be helpful, perhaps. There's a lot of people listening that are very familiar with it, and some people that are not. So maybe a bit of a refresh about what that potentially might mean, and also your experiences of Liverpool and Manchester and other places, how they've sort of dealt with this.
I think the big difference that we've got, unlike other parts of Europe that have tourism taxes or bed taxes or a price per head, Venice springs to mind, and Barcelona, where they've got problems with tourism infrastructure, or they feel as though they've got over tourism, they have a much lower rate of VAT. So they all apply a reduced rate of VAT for accommodation. It's often as low as 5%. So even with their tourism taxes and bed taxes, they're still paying less in tax than we do in the UK. So we are heavily taxed. We're 139th in the world out of 141 in terms of price competitiveness. But the second point is, again, it's what purpose are you using a tourism tax for? In Wales, only 10% of visitors to Wales stay overnight. Now, your overnight visitors are the ones that spend in the local economy, spend in the local community. They're not the ones who turn up as a day tripper, climb on the national parks, go on the beaches, pay nothing to visit, bring their own picnics and go home again, hopefully taking their litter with them. Your overnight visitors will spend on average 8 times as much as a day tripper. But these are the ones that we're trying to tax. And if it comes to international visitors, only 1% of Welsh visitors are coming from overseas, and they spend even more. So we're putting in place a tax in Wales that actually is going to deter people from visiting, because it's going to make it more expensive, and it isn't going to do anything to support the local community and economy. In Wales, in Liverpool and Manchester, which you mentioned, and also in Torbay, which is a sort of equivalent area to the North Wales coast, they've put in place business improvement districts, and the hoteliers there are working and controlling and ring fencing the funds. So they are putting similar kinds of taxes, or it's a proportion of their rateable value that goes, but it's raising money in order to fund marketing to get more tourists to visit. It's funding, it's called subvention funding. Right. Where you actually pay people to bring their conference or to bring their event to your location, to bring it to Llandudno, for example. So it's a very different purpose. It's actually trying to encourage more people to come and to use it to support the businesses in marketing, growing demand, and providing tourism infrastructure. And crucially, the businesses control it. It's a private sector board, and it's voted on by the businesses, and they control it. That, to me, is a far better way of looking at raising money to deliver something that tourists need and the tourist businesses need as well.
And of course, I think it's the uncertainty. Businesses do not like uncertainty. And at the moment, we don't really know, which councils are going to implement it, how it's going to be implemented, where it's going to be invested. And I think that is, some companies I've spoken to, they're being very circumspect about investing in Wales because of this uncertainty.
Absolutely. And you couple on top of that, are those tourism infrastructures that they're going to put, the accommodation, they might be taxed. They might be subject to restrictions on short-term lets. They might be subject to the use they can put those premises to, the 182-day rule and second home regulation. They might also be subject to different business rates and different treatment. And there's sort of restrictions that we'll be going through in terms of the broader tax take and planning, and all of those things mean that you're not seeing investment going into Wales in the same way that we are seeing it going into other parts of the country. And it's not just in new businesses and new spend, it's about refurbishing the existing product. And unless you create that infrastructure, you're not going to get more people coming to stay, coming to visit, because when they get there, there isn't as much to do, the facilities are not there. You need the infrastructure to unlock the investment in nuclear, in free ports, all of those kind of things, as well as the cruisers coming in. The visitors need to have something to spend their money on in order to invest back into the local community.
Exactly. And then, so what's the ramifications of the tourism tax on, say, for example, we have a lot of large cruise ships coming here to Holyhead, and we've got the 17 million levelling up fund for Holyhead, and that's going to be focused on really regenerating the high street. We've got Will Stewart he's a fantastic warden at the Breakwater Park. He's actually asked a question, which I'll go to in a minute. But what does that mean for the actual the cruise ship passengers in terms of the tourism tax? Will they go somewhere else?
Well, we're not quite sure at the moment.
Yeah.
I think that will depend on the rules and regulations. And again, that adds a further layer of uncertainty. If you don't know whether you're going to have different rules in different parts of Wales and different parts of the UK as a whole, because tourism taxes are being about in Liverpool, being talked about in Scotland. The cruise terminals in Liverpool, they're not getting taxed, but I haven't heard confirmation of what happens in Wales. And interestingly as well, in Venice, they've now rescinded their tourism tax and they've put it on the cruise ship visitors who don't stay overnight.
Right.
So they've gone for the reverse, so that they do get some value and they try and encourage people to come and stay overnight. But at the moment, we just don't know. And again, if you're looking at attracting people back to Anglesey, attracting cruise ships back into Holyhead, that uncertainty does not help.
And also, it's not just the people coming from England, is it? It's actually people going within Wales,
Absolutely. I mean, it would be anybody. If you're going to travel from Ynys Môn down to Cardiff to go and see the rugby, or you're going to visit family and friends across the rest of Wales, for any of those trips, if you stay overnight in a hotel or a visitor accommodation, you are going to be paying a tax. And so that really does impact on people's decision to go and spend. And it might only seem like a small amount of money. People talk about it as an extra £1 a night, but if you've got a family of 4 and suddenly you're staying for sort of a long weekend, that's money you can't spend on taxis or ice creams or having a coffee, or it might mean that you only stay 3 nights instead of 5. So it does deter people from staying. And crucially, when we're looking at things like business tourism, I mean, I was fortunate to be able to go to the conference at the new ICC Centre in Newport. Fantastic facility, but it's just over the bridge from Bristol and Bath. So if you're talking about getting conferences there, if those delegates suddenly have to pay extra amount of money, or the same up in Llandudno, you know, for those visitor business conference events, people are going to go elsewhere.
So what would you recommend? We've got a fantastically vibrant tourism sector here on the island. You've met many of them, and not in terms of you know, hotels, guest houses. We've got Sea, we've got Pili Palace, we've got, you know, the Breakwater Park with Will Stewart. What would you recommend that these you know, these businesses actually do?
I think they need to come together and talk and agree collectively what they want to do. It's always better to be on the front foot and in control of your own destiny. If there's tourism infrastructure and tourism spend that they want to see, then work out together what they would like to spend that money on. I mean, that was where the accommodation bids came from in Manchester and Liverpool, was the hoteliers coming together saying, right, before somebody imposes it on us, let's work out what we want and how to do it and see if we can do it on a voluntary basis. And that might be a way of fending off a tourism tax coming through, because you've agreed a voluntary ring-fenced scheme. But at the very least, work out what you want the council to do. We're continuing to push and lobby in the Senedd and across the rest of the country to say that if local authorities are given this power, then there has to be a ring fence on the funds. It can't be used to fund other public services. So we need to make sure it's spent in the tourism economy for the tourism businesses. But have a shopping list, go and talk to the local council, say this is what you want to do if they are looking at doing it. But how fantastic would it be to have something that you were doing as a voluntary initiative that meant you didn't need to have a tourism tax in Anglesey? That would be a different selling point.
Yeah, that's fantastic advice, and we have got a great selling point already, because now we've got free port status, so we're certainly already differentiating ourselves. And I think you know, whenever I talk about Anglesey and Holyhead having the second busiest ro-ro port in the UK, I think people are genuinely surprised. They didn't realise how much freight and volume and traffic that we've actually got going through Holyhead. So I think that's really important. It might be helpful for you to explain to, I mean, a lot of people are experts on the whole VOA situation, but for some people listening, they might not be aware of the situation that's changing, and also how acute it is and how tough it is for a lot of these businesses in Wales.
Yeah, well, in Wales, what they're looking at doing is working out how you define what is a short-term holiday let and what is a second home, so that you get an appropriate level of tax, because you've got people who are moving between the two and not qualifying for business rates, also not qualifying for council tax. So I think what the Welsh government is doing is trying to make sure that anybody who offers commercially accommodation is properly registered and taxed appropriately. And that's something obviously we support, because otherwise you don't have a level playing field. But the VOA is coming up with some very strange rules and regulations for trying to work out and calculate. So this is the 182-day rule to determine whether you're eligible for that kind of business rates relief. And it's about making sure we've got consistent definitions that are appropriate and relevant, and that they talk to the industry so that they understand it from an operator's perspective. So this is about days that you are letting rather than days that you are occupied. And one thing that has come up when we've been talking UK hospitality, we're in a bit of a unique situation and a unique position, because we sit and we lobby, and we're the national voice to the Westminster Parliament, but we also sit across the devolved administrations where you've got England only powers, Wales, Scotland, Northern Ireland. And what's increasingly clear when you're looking at this space is that there's no definition of a short-term let. There's no definition of a holiday let. And that's one of the things we need to provide as a matter of consistency. So when the legislation is going through, we'll be trying to work with the Valuation Office to make sure we've got a consistent definition across all parts of the UK, and everybody knows where they stand.
Yeah, okay, excellent. And then, so we've got some questions coming through. So we've got Will Stewart. Will is absolute trooper. I did a tour last summer around the island. I cycled around the island with Will, which was absolutely brilliant fun. And my husband, he says, Noswaith, good evening. He's been thinking about a question, maybe something to do with stats and projections. And then he wants to talk about how people locally have been making tourists and visitors, how friendly they are, and he says he hears that so much, and I've seen that in Holyhead, and when we have some of the cruise ships, there's Jamie who runs picnics and runs a sandwich shop just opposite my office in Stanley Street, and his daughter stands there in Welsh costumes, greeting all the visitors. I often see Jeff Evans, who's one of the councillors as well, taking visitors around, and we've had a lot of local people have been trained to welcome the visitors. And I think Will makes a really good point that there are many fantastic people in the area doing wonderful things and volunteering and working in different places to give visitors that feel of that they really love this place, because once people come. And Frederica says, Will, you work so hard at welcoming tourists, we're all indebted to you. I think there's a bit of a fan club going on here, Kate. Will says, team effort. There we go. Hi, Nigel Ellis. Great to have you on board. Hi, make it your business. Anis Morn. Frederica says, wonderful evening. Make it your business says, what do you think of the proposed tourism tax? I think we've talked quite a lot about that. What will the money be used for? Elian Williams says, evening, ladies. Trevor Carroll Hughes Morris says, if your property gets less than 35 weeks occupancy, you are on domestic rates. So though you're a business, you pay triple domestic rates. How can this be fair? I think Trevor makes a really good point there.
It's a hugely important point, and it's one we keep pushing away on. This is, if you are a business, you are open and trading and making yourself available. You're not necessarily going to be occupied all that time. And I think people need to reflect and realise the seasonality of these businesses and the ebbs and flows that you will get. So what we're pushing for is that you've got a clearer understanding and definition of being open and available rather than necessarily fully occupied for those periods of time. So we're continuing to push with the Valuation Office and the Welsh Government to try and fix that. And just going back to that welcome point, I think that is so important. And the last time I was on the roundtable with you, we talked a lot about skills and training and making sure that we were equipping it with so many people on the island working in hospitality and tourism. These are soft skills and they're lifelong skills, and we need to make sure that they're valued. But I was in a meeting today with ministers in Westminster, and they were talking about how our welcome host training and the sort of induction training we do on customer service was really equipping people working in HMRC, people working in police, people working in the probation service. So all of these industries that Ynys Môn is also, looking to recruit and attract and have people coming in, they also need those transferable skills. So it's not just about equipping the young people for working in hospitality, it's also about equipping them to have those lifelong skills as they go forward in other areas, and hopefully keeping the talent in Ynys Môn rather than exporting our bright young people.
Exactly, and we want to keep it's really important, the communities here and the Welsh language, and that's what I've been doing since I was elected. That's why I'm sort of championing getting Freeport status, and that's why I'm championing trying to get new nuclear at Wilver. Every day we see young people and they want to be able to stay in their home, and that means having a good quality job. So Lydia, hi Lydia, lovely to see you tonight. And Victoria Roberts makes a point here. She says tourism tax won't be coming in for at least 2 years, even if it does see the light of day. Welsh Government are nowhere near implementing this. Is that your experience, Kate?
I think they're moving at pace on this, and they are desperate to try and make sure that the industry is coming with them and trying to get us on board to try and make sure that they can do it as quickly and swiftly as they can. I think it will take time, but I think they are moving at pace. And in the meantime, local authorities are equipping themselves and working through what they will do when they get their hands on this money. So I think although it takes time to go through the Senedd, the local authorities will be there waiting to go on day one as soon as it's in place. So, we're not taking that far off. You're talking 2 seasons.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And then we've got Elian Williams says, tourism is a massive part of our Welsh economy. I'm a great believer in don't bite the hand that feeds you. Definitely not in favour of any taxes levied at the tourists. We've got Trevor says, do you think Airbnb properties should be put on the same standing as holiday lets, B&Bs, guest houses with rates, insurance, pat testing, tourist tax, etc.? And Gwendon Holiday Homes has said, Airbnb is just a platform. They are no different to other furnished holiday lets. So what's your view on Airbnb?
I would agree. I mean, I think my view is if you are putting on the market for commercial rent, even if it's just for a day, that you are putting on a property in the market, you need to make sure it meets minimum safety, hygiene and legal compliance. And all too often these properties don't, and there's no means of checking them. The local authority doesn't know where they are, doesn't know which properties are for domestic, which properties are being used commercially. So it does need to be a level playing field established so that we have a fair competition, we have enough tourism infrastructure, and local authorities know where to invest. You know, if you're trying to boost tourism infrastructure in places like Innismore, and especially with the developments coming with the Freeport and the influx of hopefully of workers coming to build nuclear power and Freeport, you're going to need accommodation for them to stay in, and you can't make decisions unless you've got complete transparency. So I think there's two big reasons why you want to make sure that you've got a statutory registration scheme, and that anybody who is letting property has it properly registered and meets a minimum safety standard. And for existing holiday operators and commercial holiday lets, that should be a very simple and straightforward task, and it shouldn't cost anything because they're already meeting these. It's for the sort of Airbnbs and the similar kinds of property to be able to demonstrate that they meet the same standards.
Thank you. And Adrian Edwards, fantastic. She said, good evening, ladies. Good evening, back to her. And Gwendolyn Holiday Home says, how can Welsh Government implement the tourism tax when they don't know how many self-catering properties are out there? And Kurt Messick says, interesting conversation. I'd love to visit Wales whenever I come over to the UK. Brilliant. So we've got hopefully we'll have another visitor. Kurt, you'll get a very warm croeso welcome. Gwendolyn Holiday Home said, we're currently on council tax but have to pay for commercial waste. This surely isn't fair if we're not recognised as an official business. If we're paying council tax, they should collect our waste.
I would agree, but without knowing the details of the local area and why there isn't residential collection as opposed to commercial collection. But it would seem odd that if you are a commercial, I'm assuming that they are a commercial premises.
No, exactly. I'm just trying to find some more questions. Frederica says, while I know this is a Welsh Government decision, I still worry about the need for a third crossing to accommodate additional traffic during the holiday periods. Yeah, absolutely. And this was a question I brought up in the chamber in Welsh Questions actually on Wednesday, just before Prime Minister's questions. And we had the sudden closure of the Britannia Bridge earlier last week, which had devastating impact on the local community. And we really do need to get that plan in place for a third crossing, and because we do need to have that resilience in terms of our connectivity, and having the Britannia Bridge closed, and then the Menai Suspension Bridge with a 7.5-ton limit, and I'm regularly bringing companies around the island, and one of the key things they ask is about that connectivity, and I think in terms of our people coming to visit as well.
Well, I think there's three key things that we look at and that we're pressing ministers on in Wales, but also in Westminster. The tourism industry needs help to grow demand. We're not back to pre-COVID levels. We need help to meet that demand and that skills, but it's also about that infrastructure. There is no point in trying to get more people to come if you don't have the infrastructure in place to be able to support them. And that third thing is unlocking investment. And you won't get the investment coming into parts of the country unless you've got that infrastructure. So you're absolutely right. We don't get any resilience in the sector as a whole unless we've got that infrastructure, unless when people come off the cruise ships, there's places for them to eat, there's coffee shops. When people come and stay, or they travel, or there's freight, there's holiday homes and there's accommodation for them. You need that whole hinterland. It's a holistic interlinked chain, and we need to make sure that the local authority, the Welsh Government and the Westminster Government supports those businesses to deliver that.
Excellent. Well, thank you so much, Kate. Really appreciate you coming on tonight. I think it was an excellent Facebook Live, and I think you've been answered the questions really in an awful lot of detail. So thank you. I'd just like to end by saying I look forward to seeing many of my listeners. My defibrillator free training session tomorrow in Gorkamai is 10 till 12. If you'd like to join, you can just drop me an email and we'll send details, or go on my website and you'll see how to sign up. Next week, I've got another guest, the FSB. Michael Limon, who is the FSB Wales, so looking forward to that. If you would like to have any suggestions, then please do get in touch. I think we've got Wyn Penryn who's going to be talking about the Anglesey show. I've got the farming minister, and thank you all those sending in mugs. Please do keep sending in mugs for my panad with Virginia. And in terms of dates for your diary, we've got my over 50s jobs fair, which is Thursday the 29th of June in Holyhead Town Hall. We've got 2 seminars for Freeport. We've got one on Friday the 21st of July in the morning at Mentamorn, and another one on Friday the 8th of September at MSpark. And last but not least, please do put the 22nd of November in your diary for Anglesey Day in Westminster. I would love to welcome as many people as possible to the island. Everybody that comes is going to get a red dragon, Kate. So you must pop in and see us. And I think we'll have the Secretary of State for Wales and hopefully a few other ministers and MPs as well. But you'll get a warm welcome from us, Kate. And so thank you so much. Really much
like to join you for that. I will even bring you my version of Welsh cakes, which in the northeast we call singing hinnies.
Oh, brilliant. Well, on that fantastic note, thank you so much. You have a lovely evening. All right. Diolch yn fawr.